recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Schneider, to inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Secretary Azar, for coming before our committee today. As you know, my home state of Illinois had the second confirmed case of coronavirus. As well, Chicago O'Hare, directly adjacent to my district, is one of the select screening airports passengers for China. That means that we have primary, secondary, and tertiary quarantine sites in and around my district. These facts have sparked a fair degree of concern and worry among my constituents, as it has across the country. I am a strong believer in the axiom, prepare for the worst, hope for the best. I wish I could, with confidence, simply ease my constituents' fears by saying our administration is fully prepared and has the situation under control. But right now, I feel like saying so would be, generously speaking, a stretch of the truth. The Trump administration's response has been at best lethargic, at worst incomprehensibly short-sighted. The budget you are presenting to our committee today only stands to further weaken the agencies like the CDC that are critical to the response to the coronavirus outbreak. On top of that, the President and your department are requesting a mere $2.5 billion in emergency funding. You said it was a chess game. To put in context how insufficient this funding is, our Illinois state government projects a 15% decrease in GDP in the worst-case scenario of a widespread outbreak. That totals to $131 billion per year, or $10.5 billion per month. The state would need 1,000 state responders at the cost of $70 million every 30 days. Illinois alone will need 500,000 units of personal protective equipment, gowns, gloves, masks, face shields, per month, totaling $35 million there. And the cost of the current standard 14 days of quarantine, including housing, food, medical support, and law enforcement, is estimated at $10,000 per individual. That's just for one person. These numbers are staggering, and that is only one state representing a mere fraction of the national need. You just said a few minutes ago that we need to prepare for all outcomes. Secretary Azar, do you think the President and your agency's budget request is sufficient to be prepared for just the most likely, let alone the worst case scenario? And if not, do you expect states, communities, and local hospitals will need to, in fact, be able to foot the rest of the bill?
So we do believe it is the appropriate response for the remaining months of 2020, but the President has made it very clear that we will work with Congress on a bipartisan, bicameral basis to secure additional monies such that Congress sees fit. I did want to mention, it is not part of our doctrine for pandemic that we would be using mandatory institutional quarantine like we've dealt with in Chicago there. That's unique circumstances of federal quarantine from these passengers coming in from out of the country in this active containment period. So it would not be part of the expectation for Americans that you would see this. It would be home isolation is really briefly, much more what we would do.
The case in California, is that person in quarantine?
Because we are still in an active containment strategy, which is to put people into mandatory quarantine. At some point, if we were in a mitigation mode, people will stay at home, just like with severe flu.
Okay, so, and just for the sake of time, my constituents in general would feel more confident if we were preparing to protect us against the worst case, if we're asking for all the funding and never had to use it. But you're not, which is, I believe, unnecessarily putting our communities and our nation at risk when lives are at stake. And we also have to, and this may be a question you need to answer separately, deal with the logistical issues like supply chain management with stockpiling we need to be dealing with today, not tomorrow. Can you provide us with concrete examples of how the agency is preparing for shortages in supplies like gowns, masks, et cetera, and what you've done so far, and what you plan to do in the future to make sure we have things placed where we need them, when they need them, as they need them?
So we're already using on the transfer and reprogramming money to initiate contracts for gowns and as well as N95 masks, and with the emergency supplemental funding that we hopefully will get, we will acquire massively more amounts of that, but we've started the seed contracts so we can build on those quickly.
My time is up. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman.